So why are people choosing to trust, Azure and Microsoft for the security of their most critical data? One of those reasons is that Microsoft is uniquely placed in the market to understand what's happening on a day-to-day basis through the information that they gather across their services. So lots of statistics on here about how Microsoft kind of receive telemetry and signals or based on around security. So just to highlight some of those, Microsoft received telemetry from more than 1.2 billion PCs across both consumer and commercial segments. They've got over 1 billion users of their cloud services. These are huge numbers. There's probably not another company out there that has that kind of reach across the globe and has that kind of amount of data that's kind of flowing back in. Some of the other ones on there, 470 billion emails that they're kind of looking at through their email pipeline. That's every month. Anything that's coming through as an email-based threat, they're going to get visibility of that really early. Perhaps the most important one from a security point of view, there's more than 5 billion threat attempts that they block every single month. So Microsoft obviously have a great spread. They've got a large network through their Azure data centers. They've got 1 billion users sitting on Microsoft 365 and other applications and services. What are they doing with this data? So the data that they receive, they infuse into their own security products, and you can then use these products to help secure your data, your users, and your devices. They refer to this service as the Microsoft Threat Intelligence, and it helps provide insights to allow organizations to proactively defend against advanced threats, things like malware, phishing, zero-day attacks, and other cybersecurity attacks. It's not just Microsoft as well. Microsoft created something called the Microsoft Intelligence Security Association, and that's made up of more than 133 member organizations, all with the one purpose really of trying to protect users, protect businesses from bad actors, hackers, and cybersecurity attacks. So we've looked at Microsoft's unique position in the market and how they gather intelligence on cybersecurity threats. What do they do with those? Well, we said they infuse them into their products. This slide here, it's a very busy slide. And really what it's trying to communicate is all of the different areas and all the different security products that Microsoft has that you can use in your defense against cybersecurity attacks. What this diagram also shows, it reflects Microsoft's massive ongoing investment into cybersecurity, research and development. They currently spend over $1 billion annually in security R&D. Again, there's not many other companies out there that have got that kind of money or that kind of investment in security. It's in Microsoft's interest. They've got lots of products and services out there that provide specific capabilities to their customers. And customers need to be able to secure their assets and their data. They're not stopping there though. You may have seen in the press last year, but Satya Nadella committed Microsoft to invest a further $20 billion to advance the security solutions that are on your screen over the next 5 years, as well as $150 million to help government agencies upgrade their protections and expand cybersecurity training partnerships that they have out there. Cybersecurity kind of skill sets are in short supply, and this is one of the things that Microsoft are looking to address. Right in the middle of there, that you can see we've got the Azure marketplace. So beyond what Microsoft can offer, within the Azure marketplace, you've got all manner of third-party security vendors. You probably recognise some of the logos there, but you'll certainly recognise some of the names of the services that are there. I checked this week. There's nearly 4,000 offerings, not including consultancy, from a whole variety of vendors. It's a huge number of tools and services to help you secure your environment and the data that's on there. So all this is great, but it can seem a little bit overwhelming. it should really hopefully give you confidence in Azure, in public cloud in general, as being the most secure place to store your data. So if that's true, why do things go wrong? We've all heard sort of the horror stories. We've heard stories about data leaks and hacks, and really for me that comes down to maybe there's two key areas which I think are at the root of most of these issues. So the first is misunderstanding the shared responsibility model that applies to public cloud, and the second is actually just misconfiguration of the Azure platform. And we're going to talk about the frameworks and the benchmarks that we can put in place to stop that happening. So the shared responsibility model, in terms of how it looks, is very much like a simplified BASIC document. You may have seen for any services you kind of sign up on contracts and that sort of thing. Not just Azure, but public cloud vendors in general want you to understand where and when their responsibility ends, and where yours as the customer begins. And the reason for this is pretty clear. If customers are using the platform irresponsibly, when we get an issue where a data leak occurs or someone gets hacked, despite being outside of the vendor's control, from a reputation point of view, it's incredibly damaging for them. If you're hacked, people don't say, "Oh, what did you get wrong? What didn't you do?" People just say, "What platform are you on?" And they kind of the association that goes with that. So, in terms of the shared responsibility model, starting from kind of right to left, on-premise, we've all probably at some point supported an on-premise or a data, co-located environment. You're responsible for absolutely everything within that environment, from the physical data center. So if you've got it on premise within your office, everything from the locks on the doors all the way up to the applications and the data that are running. People moving from on-prem to an IaaS solution on Azure. When we talk about infrastructure as a service, really we're just talking, most people are referring to VMs. I've got 100 VMs running on-prem. I want to run 100 VMs as infrastructure as a service on Azure. So straight away doing that, you're no longer responsible for that underlying physical security that your services run on. And this is now the responsibility of Microsoft. However, there's not really anything beyond that they are kind of responsible for. If you look at what you're kind of still responsible for in an IaaS environment, it includes network management, patching, operating system configuration, application feature deployment, access control, and identity management configuration. So Microsoft will still try and help you here. You're responsible for that OS, but by not letting you run out of date operating systems on the platform, that no longer have security patches created for them, that creates a more secure environment. They've also will have a service that provides automatic guest VM patching. So when you get a critical or a security patch be released, they're downloaded and they're applied automatically on that VM, and that's for Linux and Windows servers as well. However, you have to switch this on. You're still responsible for that happening. And something as simple as this, has a massive impact in terms of vulnerability and patching management. Around 80% of all breaches happen against vulnerabilities that are 6 months or older. So it's a known issue that hackers are scanning for, that there's a patch out there to fix it. It just hasn't been updated. So just doing something as simple as switching on this service, can really save you a future headache and improve your security posture. So that's IaaS. If we look at PaaS, or platform as a service, here the OS goes away. It gets added to the list of things that Microsoft becomes responsible for, and you begin to share some of those responsibilities. Your network, applications, ID, and directory structure, depending on the use case. But they're no longer solely your responsibility. So a good example for a PaaS service is blob storage. So you're storing data. So where you have responsibility, is around like the network controls. So, you can make that blob storage account publicly available across the internet, or you can lock it down and only have it accessible via a private endpoint. Both are technically valid configurations, but if you had sensitive data in there, one of them would be considered risky. If you were storing data that you don't want other people to have access to. So looking across that kind of top sort of yellow bar, you can see that there's things that you're always responsible for. So the data is your responsibility. So, backups, access permissions and data protection, things like encryption. Device management, so your PCs, your notebooks, your smartphones. Data encryption of devices, making sure that operating system software is up to date and virus protection is installed. All basics that you still need to do. And then user account management and protection. So, password length, complexity, looking to implement things like conditional access or MFA. Again, another kind of stat I pulled out from a kind of previous report that I read was around multi-factor authentication. Enabling that on your accounts can help reduce the risk of identity being compromised by more than 99.9%. So you're all but guaranteed by implementing MFA to remove that risk of that identity being compromised. How you deliver that, having MFA pop up for every single time your account's being authenticated can be, a drain. It becomes something that people do automatically without really, realizing what they're doing, and that kind of leads to opportunities for hackers. So being responsible on how you kind of deliver that. But again, it's a service that's available from Microsoft that you can sign up for. It's free for admin accounts on Azure as well, so there's no excuse not to be using it. So on those responsibilities, I just want to add some of my own thoughts around, things that you should be looking to do as part of, no matter anything from kind of a SaaS down to an on-prem, things that kind of are your responsibility really, and always will be, no matter the platform that you're using. So you're responsible for identifying and classifying your data. This is hugely important. You can't protect what you don't know about. You can make assumptions about data in databases, or perhaps within certain file shares, but really you need to understand everything that you've got out there and start building a plan to protect it. Establish a modern perimeter. So this is really, as a result of the last few years of everyone kind of working at home and hybrid working becoming kind of the norm. Perimeters used to be designed on network traffic on an enterprise network, VPN, a VPN in from home, or a VPN in from a site into the data center. And effectively, once you authenticated yourself with that firewall, effectively everything is really open to you, in terms of your visibility of the network, it is pretty much open. That's a traditional approach, and it isn't really feasible for sort of modern cloud-based workloads. You should really be looking at, using all the signals that are available really to you to be able to establish, whether that request to a resource it is a valid one, using something like conditional access. Securing the endpoints you control and managing the risks for those that you don't. So really having, we understand what we need to do with endpoints. We deploy antivirus, we encrypt devices, we make sure devices have got passwords. That's great for the ones that you do. You might have a really solid image that's been approved by your security team, and you roll it out to all of your laptops. But you need to have policies in place as well for BYOD and public access. Verify explicitly. So this is one of the principles of zero trust. And again, looking at verifying explicitly who's accessing your data based on all the available information that you've got. So I mentioned Azure AD conditional access. That analyzes signals based on who the user is, what the device is that they're using, and the location that they're coming from. and then it will automate a decision, based on things like threat intelligence. If you're coming from an area or an IP range that's considered highly risky, that's some of the stuff that gets fed into the those decision engines. But also you're able to enforce your own organizational access policies. So looking at when I'm working on my laptop, corporate device, perhaps I'm allowed to download things from SharePoint to work on offline. If I'm coming in on a jailbroken, Android phone that doesn't have any antivirus, you can stop that happening. So it's being much more intelligent with kind of the information that's available, that's out there, and then explicitly verifying people are who they say they are. And then another of those zero trust principles is, least privilege access. So just limiting access to sensitive data based on, do you need access to this data to do your job? Do you need to be part of an administrative group or, have elevated privileges, to do your job? Really, it's about giving people the minimum that they need, or just enough access is a term that's often used. And if they do need elevated privileges, you don't have them all the time. Using things like just-in-time access, another feature of Azure AD, can allow you to control, when people have access to that sensitive data. So that was a shared responsibility model. And the second point I spoke about was misconfiguration of Azure. And we're going to get into that a little bit more here. But new services and features are released daily in Azure. You've got developers perhaps working on products within your own businesses or third parties that are rapidly publishing new cloud applications that are built on these new services. And then you've got attackers, that are always seeking new ways to try and exploit misconfigured resources. The cloud moves really fast, developers move really fast, and attackers are always on the move and looking for the next exploit. Like we said, there's loads of security features that are out there. The analogy I use is no point having the best alarm system in the world. You don't turn it on, or the password set to 1234, or you've got the password stuck on a post-it note next to the keypad. The tools are there, but they have to be configured correctly, for you to get the best benefit out of them. So in terms of free information that's available to you from Microsoft, starting up there on the top left, you've got security documentation, so technical guidance to help security professionals build and implement cyber security strategies, architectures, and prioritize roadmaps of how they're going to make their environment more secure. Microsoft publish articles, news articles to raise awareness of different issues. You can find general security best practices within there, training for cybersecurity. There's study materials for security certifications to kind of augment what you already know about the platform. And then you've got documentation right down to a specific Azure service, such as an Azure Firewall, Azure AD, or Microsoft Sentinel. So moving into the sort of top middle diagram, this is zero trust. You might have seen it before. There's loads of information about zero trust on Microsoft website, including minimum baseline, details of Microsoft's own journey towards a zero trust environment and how they adopted zero trust principles. Those principles being verify explicitly, assume breach, and use least privilege access. We've also done some we've got our own learning hub, and we've done quite a lot on zero trust as well. You can get little snippets of videos of webinars that we've done that talk about this. If you prefer to kind of study that way or learn that way, I should say, rather than going through documentation. So on the right at the top there, you've got Azure Security Benchmark. So we're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail. The benchmark makes recommendations from Azure. They give you a starting point for selecting specific security configuration settings in your environment for specific services, and that allows you to quickly reduce your risk really for the organization. And then there's Azure frameworks. So bottom left there, we've got Cloud Adoption Framework. This provides guidance for each stage of your cloud adoption journey, including security and governance are definitely part of that. And then to the bottom right there, you've got the well-architected framework. So this is a set of guiding principles or tenets that you can use to improve the quality of a workload that's running in Azure. The framework consists of these 5 tenets or pillars of architectural excellence. You might just be able to see there, the bottom one there is security. So these last 3, Azure frameworks and the security benchmark, is what we're going to discuss next.